number one, I need y'all to really deprioritize the white gaze. I don't give a fuck if white people like a hip hop performance or not. That was a pure rap performance at the highest level. That's what I can say. But I don't think people expected him to motherfucking kill it like this. I don't think anybody has ever killed it like this or had a victory lap like this or taken hip hop to the highest of heights like this. So I'll be fucking damned if he doesn't say Drake, I hear you like I'm young. When this nigga does in fact like I'm young. What's up, family? Welcome back to another episode of Look at the Material podcast. I'm your host, BK, and today we're talking all things Kendrick Bowl. I'm gonna start this video off by saying this is simply one perspective on Kendrick's performance. Multiple things are typically true at once. I think there are layers here, there's nuance here as always, and there's a million different ways to look at this performance art. The differences in thought, in my opinion, have more to do with different schools of thought among Black Americans that date back to Douglass versus Du Bois. We may agree, we may disagree. Either way, I hope you enjoy the video. Now let's look at the material. So the performance itself and the subsequent discourse around this performance reminds me of lyrics from a No Name song called Namesake. Now, I'm not painting No Name as some left-wing savior, but in hip hop, I believe she is a North Star. She isn't a safe Black, so to speak. She does hip hop in real life through her book club, which impacts incarcerated folks and brings consciousness to the people. The lyrics read in between the line at the crime scene. I ain't fucking with the NFL or Jay-Z. Propaganda for the military complex. The same gun that shot Lil Terry out west. The same gun that shot Samir in the West Bank. We all think the Super Bowl is the best thing. Go, Rihanna, go. Watch the fighter jets fly high. War Machine gets glamorized. We play the game to pass the time. Go, Beyonce, go. Watch the fighter jets fly high. War Machine gets glamorized. We play the game to pass the time. Go, Kendrick, go. Watch the fighter jet fly high. War Machine gets glamorized. We play the game to pass the time. Go, No Name, go. Coachella stage got sanitized. I said I wouldn't perform for them, and somehow I still fell in line. I think that is a perfect way to open up this video because although No Name is offering a very strong critique of the NFL, Jay-Z, and the partnership between the two, propaganda and the military industrial complex that's on display at things like the Super Bowl, the fact that we're very geeked for the Super Bowl every single year, despite the horrible, evil organization that the NFL is. I love that No Name not only calls out Rihanna, Beyonce, and Kendrick for being a part of the glamorization of this war machine known as America, she calls herself out. She says that essentially I was supposed to not perform for Coachella. I was supposed to protest Coachella, probably because of some unethical business practices or who knows. I actually don't know if that's true, but probably something along those lines to make a statement. And she says, somehow I still fell in line. So I think this video in general is gonna hold space for the complexity that is living in America as a Black person. What does it mean to subvert the state? What does it mean to protest? And what does it mean to be an artist within the imperial core, which is the United States? That is the broader thesis of this video, but I do want to just kind of go step by step from my point of view. So let's start at the Apple Music interview. I think that the Apple Music interview that Kendrick did before the Super Bowl with Ebro and Nadeska, which was phenomenal, I'll link it in the description below. I think that gives you a better vision or clearer vision of his point of view for the set list that he chose. This interview and the interview that Kendrick did with Timothy Chalamet in his little GNX prepared me for a GNX heavy show. Some of the main points in the interview include Kendrick putting hip hop at the ultimate forefront like this. And it's something that he takes pride in, from the Super Bowl to the billboards to the 5 Grammy Awards he won for Not Like Us. He takes pride in all the accolades that he's received for his work, particularly over the last year. And he believes he deserves it all. He also wants to return to the grit and competition of hip hop. He said that hip hop should be respected as the art form that it is, and that it's awesome that guys are getting praised for their collaborative efforts, but that hip hop is ultimately a fucking sport. It is competitive at its core. Whether it was DJs having a DJ off, whether it was MCs having an MC off, whether it was graffiti artists having a graffiti artist off, whether it was breakdancers having a breakdance off, There's always been competition at the core of hip hop. And so, yes, Kendrick's target was Drake because of this ongoing feud that's been building between them for over a decade. But it's also just about bringing that grit and essence to hip hop back to the forefront. Obviously, we know that the underground exists. We know that battle rap culture is still alive and well. So obviously, there are still people that are engaging in the true, pure, traditional spirit of hip hop. But in terms of hip hop on the main stage, Kendrick made it clear in this interview and really throughout the beef and on GNX that he wants to draw a line in the sand between hip hop lovers, hip hop fans, people who take care of the culture, and those that don't, those that treat it like a trend or a catchy hook or verse. He does throw around the culture word a lot in this interview. It's the culture for him. But in my view, if we go a little bit deeper, it's kind of counterculture, right? When Kendrick dropped Watch the Party Die, tons of people were saying, we get your sentiment, Kendrick, but you're never gonna change the game. Niggas love rapping about fucking these hoes, pimping these hoes, making money, sipping lean, killing folks, and you're never going to make the party die, so to speak, within hip hop culture. And I don't think that Kendrick was fully saying that we should dead the party, like we shouldn't have fun. Everything should just be conscious and boring, so to speak. Or let's say thought-provoking is probably a better adjective to use, because GNX is filled with fun, hype moments that are kind of just like, hey, I'm with my niggas and we having fun. I think he was just saying that we need balance. And I think to the larger point, the people that actually like care about raps, the people who actually loved his performance and the fact that it was so GNX heavy, the backpackers, the hip hop nerds, the people that are still talking about the beef a year later because we love hip hop, those are the people that he's catering to. And I say that it's counterculture because although that essence drives culture, drives sales, drives what's cool and hot and fun, the mainstream listener, in terms of how hip hop is now kind of hip pop, thanks to figures like Drake, the average listener is like, the show was whack, I didn't get it. They're not really understanding the true essence. And actually, Jermaine Dupri tweeted something along the lines of, he's glad that people are saying, hey, I don't like this. I don't like hip hop. I don't like that he was just straight rapping, because it kind of separates the real and the fake, so to speak. And so I think that hip hop was on display at the Super Bowl this year in his performance, and his interview shed light on this beforehand. He also made it clear that GNX is his I Arrived project after diving deep into his own mind through Mr. Morale. He said that he respects the past but is invested in the now and in the future, with hip hop as a genre, with PG Lang as a creative agency, and with his own career. He says that Man at the Garden is his favorite song in the album. He mentioned that unprompted several times in his interview with Timothée Chalamet, and I thought, wow, I love that he's letting us know that he deserves it all and he knows it, right? Even at the Super Bowl, on his PG Lang leather jacket, it looked like it was in his handwriting, but at the bottom right corner, it says, I deserve it all. And so there's just a little ode to Man at the Garden. I felt like the culmination of this interview made it clear the audience that he had in mind for the show: middle America versus the people. I saw some people say, oh, well, people that were in the crowd weren't even moving, and they were just showing like these images of these white people in the stands, like not understanding what's going on stage. And number one, I need y'all to really deprioritize the white gaze. I don't give a fuck if white people like a hip hop performance or not, but I want to contrast that with the videos I saw of people that had recorded their reaction and their family's reaction sitting in their living room. And honestly, I wish I set up a camera in my living room, because we were going up. I mean, screaming, running around, throwing shoes at the TV. Like, and if you see images of watch parties in LA, watch parties all over the country, people at home were enjoying this show. So, I mean, the last thing that I want to point out about this Apple interview that I think is super emblematic of Kendrick's music and just the direction he's been going, like he talks about this continuum he's been on, but just the energy that he's going to keep into the future. He talks about his art and his music having an emphasis on feeling. And even in Euphoria, he says, I'm what the culture feeling. He talks about wanting the hip hop music that he makes to make you feel something first. And that's why I think that this performance is going to be one of the most polarizing performances in hip hop history, strictly off the fact that he's the first hip hop solo headliner. And this is what it looks like to have a rapper rap and not really fall into the gimmicks. But regardless of how you feel You're not apathetic, you're not indifferent. You can't just toss it to the side and say it's mid. You have a visceral reaction to it, whether it's his music, his imagery, or his performance the other night. So taking a quick detour, I do want to talk about the fact that there was a set list leak, and academics actually fessed up and said that he was the one that leaked the set list. Not many people saw it, I don't think, because I didn't see that being like a big hubbub on the TL. I do know that Complex wrote an article about it. I'll link it in the description. The leaks really didn't make too much noise, but Act definitely did not let the moment go by to hop his drunk ass on camera and fess up to the leak.
Niggas don't leak shit, y'all niggas suck dick. I told y'all what's gonna happen, it fucking happened. You nigga like, yo, nothing bigger than the chat, nigga. Let me tell you how I got that nigga Kendrick's fucking Super Bowl performance. A nigga who worked at the fucking arena is a chat nigga. Fuck who, niggas labels tight to me, and they pay me.
Now, ultimately, it didn't matter, right? Like, whether we saw the set list or not, we didn't know how Kendrick was going to bring these songs to life or bring this set to life. And I think that whether you saw the leak or not, you were certainly surprised at how he executed the set list. Now, let's get into the performance. Like I said, I feel like this will be one of the most polarizing performances in Super Bowl history. I will say, watching it live, I was trying to kind of follow where he was going, particularly in the beginning with the unreleased snippet. I think people are dubbing it Bodies, into Squabble Up, into Humble, into DNA. That first section didn't gag me fully. I will say, watching it a second time, a third time, a fourth time, I was like, okay, I'm getting the story. I get why he probably chose the songs that he chose for the set list, but I can definitely see why people were not super blown away, because he did kind of turn the idea of a Super Bowl performance on its head. He didn't play all of his biggest hits all the way through. He didn't do the sing-along type of show. He didn't dip heavily into nostalgia at all. Going back to what he said in the Apple interview, this was a very present moment and a very present display of the music that he has out right now, which is going crazy on the Billboard 200. So, but definitely the first time we watched it, we didn't get hype until Euphoria, because we were like, oh my fucking God, is he playing Euphoria right now? That's one of my favorite songs out of the Beef, and it's actually one of the songs that aged the best out of the Beef, coming up on a year later. So I was initially turned off by the red, white, and blue and the flag formations. As I mentioned in my This Ain't Propaganda Beyonce video, anytime I see an American flag or some sort of flag, red, white, and blue configuration, I'm going to be viscerally affected. I can always do without the flag. I think that whatever message that you are getting across, unless you're burning the flag or ripping the flag up, can be communicated without having that symbol of hate, genocide, and terror present. That's just me. I know that Dot has used red and blue themes throughout his career to symbolize gang unity, but this was definitely different because of the white that was incorporated and the literal flag that was made out of black bodies, right? But what I will say about this performance is that with each rewatch, it gets better. I'm able to kind of marinate a little bit and really appreciate all the subtleties and the artistic choices. And I'm just gonna say this now, I encourage you to let the performance marinate. If you still think it's caca after you watched it 3 or 4 times, fine, art is subjective. But I will say, I watched a couple people react to it after they had watched it live, and they were like, wow, I didn't notice that the first time. Or wow, I kind of do like that. I thought I didn't like that before. Sometimes our opinions can get sullied by what we see on the internet, or just by consuming something real quick and just being like, oh, it was great, it was horrible, it was mid, instead of letting things kind of marinate. So I encourage you to do that as well. I will say that the performance itself was straight hip hop. I was so surprised by that. He was rapping on a football field while doing light to medium choreography and movements, no backing track, with a leather jacket, some flared Celine jeans, and some Nike Air DT Max 96s. That's it. That was a pure rap performance at the highest level. That's what I can say. It felt hip hop, it felt black, the scenery, the set design, and knowing that all of this was a PG Lang production, I really hope that they get that nomination for the Emmy, because wow, Chef's kiss. One thing that obviously stood out was the narration throughout the performance from Samuel. We call him Samuel. And I thought this was really cool because if you've paid attention to Kendrick's discography throughout his career, particularly in T-Pab, there is this Uncle Sam figure that is very present. And I encourage you to go listen back to T-Pab to really kind of understand that motif. But essentially, Samuel was like, don't do that, that's too ghetto. America doesn't want that. And that kind of influenced the way that Kendrick went into the different songs, right? Like Luther and All the Stars was more palatable, and Humble and DNA was what the broader public wanted to hear because maybe they could sing along to My Left Stroke Just Went Viral. White people love that shit. White people love that shit. But something that most people don't know about Samuel, which is why I think he's phenomenal, is that not only is he an actor, he was about that action, no camera. In 1969, he was frustrated with the failures of Morehouse. They weren't meeting up to their expectations, so he planned a lock-in where he locked in several board members in a room on campus with a couple of his classmates. And one of those people was actually Martin Luther King's dad. He tells the Hollywood Reporter, I came to a realization that we were being groomed to be something I didn't necessarily want to be. The Morehouse College administration was rooted in some old school things that the majority of us students didn't believe. You would be a great doctor, great lawyer, maybe a great scientist. I was skeptical of that. I didn't want to be just another Negro in the, advancement of America card. We had no connection to the people that we lived around. I was skeptical of that. We didn't even have a Black Studies class. There was no student involvement on the board. Those were the things we had to change. So not only is Samuel an iconic Black actor that will go down in history as one of the greats, he also has a history of activism and protest in his own personal life. Kendrick chose a lot of rap-heavy songs. He opens up with the GNX teaser snippet. Opening with an unreleased song is like unheard of, I'm pretty sure. Again, he kind of was like, yeah, exactly what you expect me to do. I'm just gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna perform what the fuck I wanna perform. So get ready for that. GNX teaser goes into Squabble Up. This was a huge song on the album, and I really loved that transition. Someone better squabble up. That was cute, that was cute. And then it goes into Humble and DNA. I understood thematically why these were played because of Uncle Sam's scolding of Kendrick and being like, you done lost your damn mind. Why the fuck, play what America wants, But I could have done with N95 or All Right, Then he goes into Euphoria. Euphoria. I just cannot believe he performed a diss track, actually multiple diss tracks, but like that diss track at the Super Bowl. That's a flex, and it's hip hop in its purest form, like a diss record to signify hip hop is here, to signify the genre. Like, that's just iconic in and of itself. Also, Euphoria is a prophetic song. Go back and listen to Euphoria a year later and look at what has happened since the beef has unfolded. It will blow your mind. He goes from Euphoria to Man at the Garden. I love the rendition of this song. It's one of his personal favorites. It's one of mine. When I'm going for a run and I have Man at the Garden on, it just gives me that extra bit of oomph to just keep going. And I love the stage design for that particular section where they're crowded around a light post, a lamp post, and there's a guy hanging out up top. There's people surrounding him in all white, and there's definitely theories that the garden is actually a garden cemetery, which has its own historical connotations as well. I'll make sure to link as many sources and shout outs in the description too. Then we go to Peekaboo. I'm obsessed with Peekaboo. Like, I think it's one of the best songs on the album. It's so rap heavy. It's so like, I don't know, it's just so fun. It's so free. Surprise, bitch, she say nigga, Chuck E. Cheese. Let me FaceTime my bitch, I'm up the street. Like, and the fact that he performed it in the X, which kind of extends to the whole like XXXTentacion theory. There's so much lore and Easter eggs and theories around the beef and around Kendrick and his music. It's actually so phenomenal. And this is kind of his point of like, rap is not just rap. Hip hop is an art form, rap is a sport within this genre, and it's like, I just love that he put that on display here. And I actually loved the choreography and the camera work for the Peekaboo section. That was just stellar. Then we go from Peekaboo to a Not Like Us tease where he's like, I wanna play their favorite song, but you know they love to sue. Y'all, I loved that he milked Not Like Us. I love that he teased Not Like Us throughout, like I think twice throughout the set. Like, that's exactly what we wanted, right? Let's just stop here for a second. If we think about it, Dot has been incredibly silent. Throughout the beef, he just dropped the music and you didn't hear from him. No interviews, no tweets, no Instagram captions, nothing. He does the Harper's Bazaar interview with SZA and is like, what does Not Like Us mean? And is like, it's about the man I represent, the morals, and I'm not pandering, and blah, 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 blah. No Drake mention, no beef mention, nothing. After the Harper's Bazaar interview, he drops GNX, and you're like, okay, Drake is not directly mentioned in this, but he's kind of like, fuck you. It used to be fuck that nigga, but now it's plural. Fuck everybody. That's on my body. Again, the only time he's even referencing the beef or referencing Old Boy is in the music. Fast forward, we get the Apple interview with Kendrick. This is the first time we're hearing him speak on video. Doesn't mention the beef, doesn't mention Drake. He wins the 5 Grammys the weekend before. He doesn't say anything about the beef on stage, doesn't say anything about Drake on stage. He just says, you know, respect the art form. Whitney was crip walking. He wore the Canadian tuxedo, which was a slight jab. It was like a fashionista, like diva-esque jab, right? But for the most part, he hasn't relished in Not Like Us outside of the pop out. The pop out, he played the song like 6 or 7 times. And it was for the city, it was for the culture, but it was also to like dunk on him at his home stage and really just hear the crowd rap the song bar for bar for him, right? So you can say that he got it out of his system in the pop out, but I'm personally happy that after winning 5 Grammys for this song, it is the best diss track of all time. It is the biggest diss track of all time. It is the most culturally ubiquitous diss track of all time, probably rap song of all time. And then he was able to perform it on the biggest stage and tease it and milk it and look directly in the camera. Say Drake, you know, like that was satisfying to me as a fan of hip hop and as a fan of K-Dot. So after he teases Not Like Us with the horns, after Peekaboo, we go into Luther and we go into All the Stars. I thought they kept it cute and simple. I thought SZA did amazing, whether or not she was auto-tuned mic or not. I thought she was great, and I thought I'm excited to see them perform. I definitely got tickets to see them perform in Dallas, so I'm very excited for the GNX tour, and I see that they just added a Europe leg to the tour, so this is just awesome for both of them. And then we finally get Not Like Us. Again, that was so satisfying. This is what the people wanted. This is what the people asked for. They were like, say fuck dude. Get up there and say, you know, He did that. I feel like he did that. We went up in the crib. We went crazy in the crib when this came on. We were like, oh my God, is he gonna say? And then it was like, say Drake. We're like, yo, that was insane. Then he closes us out with TV Off. I loved ending with TV Off and his little theatrics. I love that he brought out Mustard. The fact that Mustard produced Not Like Us and TV Off, and I think he produced Squabble Up too, if I'm not mistaken, but just in case, Not Like Us and TV Off alone, huge stadium anthems, huge songs, classic moments, classic verses. I was just so happy that Mustard got his moment there. Now that I've properly geeked out about this performance, let's go back to the beginning. Kendrick starts by saying, the revolution about to be televised, you picked the right time, but the wrong guy. When he says this, he's taking the lyrics of a jazz song called The Revolution Will Not Be Televised by Gil Scott-Heron in 1971. Some of the lyrics include, the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spiro Agnew. to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nubs. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. This is essentially saying that when there's an actual uprising, it will not be covered by mainstream media. That the true story of the people who are fighting back against the 1%, against the powers that be, against the man itself will not be promoted in a positive light or even at all by mainstream media. And so I'm hesitant to embrace this rendition of Kendrick essentially saying this is the revolution televised while being safe and not really pushing the envelope in any radical way. Revolution is radical. Revolution is not something that's commercialized. And I feel like that's also something that Gil Scott-Heron is saying here. It will not be brought to you by. It will not have commercial breaks, right? Taking phrases like this and using them for commercialized blackness is so 2016 coded. It gives wearing black berets at the Super Bowl or saying you're Fred Hampton reincarnated. It's hollow. Co-opting revolutionary themes and stripping them of their potency and context is something that the Black Brunch Brigade loves to do. The idea of reclamation, the idea of ain't I American or I too am America, a poem by Langston Hughes. This is reminiscent of the themes on Cowboy Carter. And I feel like the way that Kendrick displayed the American game and kind of critiquing what Black superstars have to do to get to that point, to even maneuver and navigate in that point, and the same kind of things that Beyonce was making with Cowboy Carter, like, ain't I country enough? Ain't I American enough? Look at this flag. My people built this country, whatever. There's contention because I think there's two schools of thought, right? There's one school of thought, generally, two main schools of thought. Like there's more than two ways, but I feel like I'm dividing them into two main parts. One is, are we fighting to be seen as just as American as our white counterparts? Because, you know, they forced our ancestors to work here for free and we should be able to like stake a claim in that? Or do we not care about the white gaze or reclaiming America and its symbols because of what America represents as a settler colonial state, which is built on rape, slavery, and genocide? Do we boycott altogether? I.e. the sentiment after Colin Kaepernick got penalized for kneeling? Or do we show up to these spaces and subvert norms? There are some people who think there's only one of these methods that ultimately benefits white corporate dollars conveniently. So we can show up and we can give this image of representation in these spaces, but ultimately whose pockets are getting lined for that? Not saying that representation is invalid, and I'm not saying that representation is not important. I think it is, but I think it's only one method. I think it's only one way. Later on in the show, he says, 40 acres and a mule, this is bigger than the music. And I wanna quote Kia Turner, who wrote this article entitled A Meditation for Kendrick. She says, but for who? And that's the question that I ultimately have with statements like this. The 40 acres and a mule piece and the revolution will be televised piece have the opportunity to teach people about what they're talking about. But what else, right? It's bigger than the music for who? Moments like this give some or certain Black people access to lost wealth or reparations, mobility, access. It becomes a class issue. It's like representation for the poor and more money for the upper class of Black people, the Black Brunch Brigade, the Black Billionaire Brigade, whatever you want to call them, the Black Excellence Crew. It seems that access to these rooms and spaces are limited to Jay-Z's buddies in this context, in terms of the NFL. Again, whenever we use these phrases that invoke radical thought, revolutionary thought, or even something like the broken promise of 40 acres and a mule, and all we're doing is adding a link to our site to buy our music and our merch, and it's not really impacting the larger like Black populace, you have to like scratch your head. Because I think that I agree with the idea that we have a loss of liberatory leadership And so we're projecting this stuff onto the artists, and that's not their fault, and we shouldn't do that. But when you use these revolutionary adjacent aesthetics, people start to hold you to a standard that they shouldn't hold you to, but also maybe be careful wielding those types of aesthetics with no real action behind it. I think that even the whole idea of Uncle Sam, played by Samuel, trying to tone down Kendrick and explain what we already know and live as Black Americans is kind of creatively tired. Like, I'm just kind of not gagged by that anymore. Again, I'm reminded of Samuel Jackson's physical actions of like locking MLK's daddy in a room to make a point about what their needs are as students at Morehouse. Like, actions like that actually get things done for us, you know? Action in combination with representation is even better, right? But we can't just have this one version prevailing. And I totally get this creative point of view. And like I said, I don't think it's invalid, but it's just like at this point in 2025, I just want to see Black shit in and of itself, outside of the white gaze, which I think he gave us in moments like Man at the Garden and Peekaboo, right? Even Samuel comes in and says, oh, you trying to use that culture shit, deduct one life. You know, he gave us those moments. And overall, I think that the storytelling was powerful and meaningful. But I just think that our nationality is only one aspect of being a Black American. And in an era of heavy nationalism from the alt-right and the GOP, why are we running to that display of pride and symbology or iconography? Like, in 2025, the most radical and liberatory thing you could do is actually do the radical and liberatory thing. Again, I do agree with the sentiment that we are starved for real life radical action and liberatory leadership, that we project these needs onto our Black artists, which is not fair. But when you see them use watered down revolutionary aesthetics, it begs the question, why put on the costume but not support these things in real life? I find myself thinking, like, what does Kendrick think of the Black youth that is pro-Palestinian, right? What does he think about the more left-leaning Black youth that didn't support Kamala and like don't support Black liberalism and don't support the Black establishment? I often just like think what he thinks about it. Or even let's go to his show, right? There was a Black man that in protest unfurled a Sudanese and Palestinian flag sewn together, right? To show solidarity with the genocides that are going on there. The juxtaposition of him doing that at the Super Bowl performance, Kendrick's Super Bowl performance, was stunning, in my opinion. And to be honest, I think that the most radical action of protest in that show was the man who flew those flags.
I was selected to be a part of the halftime show, and when I saw what my position was, it was a great stage, a large stage. And we know, as a practicing Muslim, our Prophet Muhammad teaches us, if you see a wrongdoing, or you're aware of a wrongdoing, you must stop it with your hands. And if you can't stop it with your hands, stop it with your tongue. Speak out against it. And if you can't stop it with your tongue, try to stop it with your heart, meaning pray about it. So I had an opportunity on a grand scale to bring awareness or speak out against a wrong of our Muslim brothers and sisters, because we're spiritually connected in Islam, and we're connected with empathy for humanity, because we're all human beings, God's creation.
I have questions like, why perform at a place like the Super Bowl for a company like the NFL? Why be a part of their rebrand? Why line their pockets and your own instead of standing on principle? We were supposed to be boycotting the shit since Kaepernick kneeled. We've come a long way from Cap. We're now at a point where Black people are like, why can't these Black mega entertainers fly the flag? They're American. They're Black American. I get that. And that's valid. That's one part of our identity as Black Americans. That's one way to show that. But like in the Squabble Up music video, Kendrick used the Black American flags. I would have loved to see some red, green, and black out there. That's all I have to say. When we talk about America and the Super Bowl in general, we think about the role of US military propaganda. Nationalism and pride for the US is on major display here, similar to the Olympics. It is the biggest stage in the US for entertainment and consumption. We've got Roger Goodell's evil ass treating the players the way that they treat the players, covering up CTE, the concentration of wealth among owners, the treatment of Kaepernick after kneeling, lack of Black head coaches and owners. Then we have the partnership with Jay-Z that was used for the branding of the NFL post Kaepernick. Jay-Z says, Quote, I think we have moved past kneeling. I think it's time to go into an actionable item. But what is that action item? A partnership with the NFL? Representation on that stage does not bring restitution for Kaepernick or for those who stand up against police brutality. It just brings him and his people and the NFL a lot of money. And although I think there is artistic value to Dot's performance, it was safe. And that's just what it is, right? Like, it's safe. It was art. It was historic in many ways. There's so many positive ways that you can describe that. But I think acting like it was some revolutionary, subversive act of like Black protest is kind of disingenuous. It did make white people uncomfortable, but when you're a hip hop artist doing hip hop shit, that'll do it. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. In my opinion, the image of the flag waving protest of the Sudanese and Palestinian flag was more powerful than the US flag imagery, even if it was made up of Black bodies. Because the US is currently committing a genocide under that flag. It represents war and terror and bloodshed, domestically and globally. And making it out of Black bodies doesn't take away that sting. Like, it's just, the symbol is the symbol at this point. And I just want Black people to know we are the prize. What we make is the prize. The prize is not the reclamation of a symbol of hate and genocide. I don't want to see Black people wearing symbols of America. The symbol of America, the flag, only represents our nationality, which is just like one descriptor for location in terms of Black Americans. Like, that is it. And ultimately, when it comes to should our Black performers perform at the Super Bowl or anything like that, I'm going to loosely reference an essay written by Ismatu Gwendolyn recently. The essence is essentially, folks want to be Nina Simone, but they don't want to sing Mississippi Goddamn. And Mississippi Goddamn, this protest song, was sung at Carnegie Hall in 1963 at the height of the civil rights movement, right? Like, if you're gonna go into that space, do the thing that's gonna get you discontinued off the radio, or do the thing that's going to possibly stop a bag or two for you, an already fucking rich person. And I think in a lot of aspects, you can say that Kendrick existing there in all of his Blackness with his Black background dancers, displaying hip hop, a 50-year-old genre that has taken the globe by storm, and performing rap heavy songs live in that environment is a statement and is radical and is artistic and has value. And I wouldn't disagree with you. But I think when we're saying things like the revolution about to be televised, and, you know, we got Samuel being like, thanks, Kendrick, it was great joining you for the televised revolution. It's like, enough. Like, if you really want to shake the table, come forth and say, from the river to the sea. I think that ultimately it's not a bad thing to want to be rewarded for the work that you've done at the highest level, like the Grammys, like the Oscars, like the NFL. But I think showing up in this way sometimes falls flat. It is important, and it's not invalid, and it's inherently complex. And I get why folks like Beyonce and Kendrick show up in these ways and say, hey, I am gonna use my platform to try to subvert as much as I can while maintaining my bag, filling the pockets of people that are next to me, not losing any sponsorships, like maintaining the establishment and just painting it Black a little bit. That's kind of what they're doing. And as long as we can be honest about that, so be it. And I get why they want to show up in these spaces this way, but it's only one way. I want to let people know this version of still showing up for these white institutions seems to be the only version we get to see on display on a mainstream level. Make no mistake, there have been hip hop artists throughout the history of the genre that have spoken up for a free Palestine, right? Like Yasin Bey, like Wu-Tang Clan. Like, there has been Lupe, Mike, Earl Sweatshirt. There is this underground, there's this over underground. There's a movement, right? Hell, even people within the hip hop ecosystem like Kai Cenat and I Show Speed and Your Rage wear their Gaza wristbands. Like, that sentiment is here. I just think that sometimes there is a big difference between the Black millionaire and billionaire class and the Black working class or even Black leftists. And that divide needs to be talked about more genuinely. I think, because this whole like I too am America stance is it's just falling flat for me. Not to reduce his or Beyonce's thing to that, but it's just so much nationalism, patriotism, alignment with white institutions. It's so much that we cannot ignore that. We just can't. The boycotts of the Oscars, so white and all that shit, it never lasts among this class of people. And it becomes a class issue when we really get down to the minutia. As with everything, there was online discourse about this performance, and the three main points that I want to hit on in terms of online discourse is the Drake of it all, the whole "are y'all gonna say this is propaganda too" crew, and it was boring, I didn't like the set list topic. So first, the Drake of it all. Some people said that it was too much Drake, right? He did the Euphoria diss track, he did Not Like Us, and you know, turn his TV off, right? We kind of get who that's about, right? But I think that folks really need to consider the anthology or the lore, the history of the beef, and how long it's been bubbling between the two of them. I also think it is the most badass hip hop thing to get up on the biggest stage and diss your op, especially if your op is Drake, who has been heralded as like this GOAT of hip hop, this behemoth in hip hop, this leader in hip hop. Now, I don't know if Drake is hip hop or not. He's hip hop light. He's like Diet Pepsi, you know what I'm saying? I would consider him more of a pop star that raps. And I've loved, you know, So Far Gone and Thank Me Later and even Nothing Was the Same. And if you're reading this too late, like I grew up on Drake, right? Like, but we have to admit, like, he cannot be the nigga holding the flag for hip hop. He cannot. His principles are not strong enough. He sells out the culture way too much. He ushered in the streaming era with Lucian and them. Like, it's too convoluted for him to be the leader of hip hop. I got so much satisfaction from seeing a blog era nigga from Compton dominate another blog era massive star and then take it this far. Like, I personally loved it. I saw people saying like, hopefully this is the end of the whole. Kendrick and Drake will forever be intertwined because of this beef. It's just like we always talk about Tupac and Biggie, or Jay and Nas, or 50 Cent and Ja Rule. Like, they're always gonna be intertwined. There is no end to the beef because chiefly Drake never shuts the fuck up about it. The OVO stands never shut the fuck up about it. On the Kendrick side, it's gonna be a victory lap forever because he was the fucking underdog. I don't know how you niggas didn't think he was gonna beat Drake's ass, but I don't think people expected him to motherfucking kill it like this. I don't think anybody has ever killed it like this or had a victory lap like this or taken hip hop to the highest of heights like this. So I'll be fucking damned if he doesn't say Drake, I hear you like I'm young. When this nigga does in fact like I'm young. If you actually don't know the details of how long this beef has been brewing and why it's so significant to the timeline and the culture of hip hop, definitely go check out FD Signifier's video entitled I'm With the Culture Feeling. It is like the Bible of the beef between Kendrick and Drake. Definitely go watch that and do not support What's the Dirt's video on this. He does a pretty decent job, but I feel like he lacks the cultural nuance. Me and Morgan actually did a reaction video called 37 Niggas and questioning should white people be commentating on hip hop in this way. Yeah, but if you have a couple hours to spare and you like video essays, definitely go check out FD's video on this. It's chef's kiss. I think that Dot secured the ultimate victory, and to the victor goes the spoils. It was very satisfying to me to see him perform Not Like Us and Euphoria on this stage like this, and yeah, I have no complaints. One very weird thing I saw in terms of online discourse, and even made it all the way up to Stephen A. Smith, was Serena's involvement in the show, which, mind you, I was gagged to see her cameo. And I actually loved the video that she did after the show. She was so hyped about that performance.
I did not crip walk like that at Wimbledon. Ooh, I would have been fine. It was all love.
But like, one of the first tweets that I saw was this person that said, oh, and Serena Williams thinks she did something, you still got fucked. And it's just like, I'm sorry. She had consensual sex with Drake like over a decade ago, and now she's married to the founder of Reddit, and they have a beautiful child named Olympia or Olympian or something like that. Like, Drake unprovoked dissed her man and harassed her. And even in the little 100 gigs drops, there was a video, a clip of him like, this is about Serena. And his mom was like, you think you should do that? Real weirdo behavior. And matter of fact, all of Drake's subs to women are unprovoked. Saying that Megan lied about getting shot. Talking about Rihanna's vagina. Attacking Serena's man. Coming for Michelle Obama's playlist. Coming for Esperanza Spalding. And the list goes on. Remember when he unfollowed Ice Spice because she kind of turned down his advances? Strange man that bullies women unprovoked. And so I'm glad Serena crip walked on his grave. But beyond that, Serena crip walking at the Wimbledon was what that was a callback to. Serena Williams being the greatest athlete and tennis player of all time is what that moment meant. Serena Williams being from Compton, California is what that moment was about. So yes, it was a light jab at Drake, but it was so much more than that. So dead that shit. The next piece is the whole, are y'all gonna say this is propaganda too? And the whole gotcha moral consistency police down the TL. This is so fucking annoying. Like, just because some of y'all cannot consistently critique folks that are your faves doesn't mean that others can't do it. Like, I saw critique about Kendrick in this performance all up and down my timeline, so save that. And it could just be like my ecosystem, but like pretty much the same people that were saying this is the best piece of propaganda I've ever seen in terms of the Beyonce Bowl are having that same consistent critique about Kendrick. It's interesting to me that at a time like this, two of the world's biggest artists and best performers are taking the time to reclaim the US flag. Something is actually fishy to me about that. The last thing that I always talk about in terms of online discourse is people saying that it was boring or they didn't like the set list or whatever. And all I have to say is to that is art is subjective. You're entitled to your opinion. But I will say, because it was the opposite of what you would expect in terms of a set list and overall performance of a Super Bowl show, I encourage you to rewatch the show and see how you feel. We rarely let things marinate these days, you know, before deciding if we like it or not. So I liked the show the more I saw it, and so I just encourage you to do the same. If you don't like it after that, you don't like it. Or if you don't want to rewatch it, that's fine too. You don't have to like everything that comes out. To close us out today, I do want to kind of reflect a little bit on what this means for hip hop, right? Like, hip hop was never supposed to make it this far. When we think about Uncle Luke fighting against censorship in hip hop, when we think about how hip hop was even birthed from the Bronx that was burning at the time and the socioeconomic plight of Black individuals. When we think about the radical storytelling and telegraphing images of the poorest parts of America, when we think about the people who took a stand in hip hop, the consciousness within hip hop, I'm left with a sense of pride that Kendrick was able to do this. And I think that he was the best to do it for hip hop. He is our current best active modern representation of hip hop. And I like what he presents. But on the other side of it, it seems that everyone at the top is just a capitalist, right? On the Heart Part 6, he talks about taking his place as a Black exec, right? And kind of following behind Jay-Z's boss type of persona in terms of capitalistic exploits, the material possessions, acquiring wealth. That does seem to still be the ultimate goal of hip hop artists, the people that are at the top. I think that it just kind of lacks balance. Like, what did it take for hip hop to get here? How many years of like degradation and kind of like commercialization over the years did it take for it to get to this point? I don't think it's necessarily totally a bad thing or totally a good thing that hip hop is at the Super Bowl, but it definitely leaves us with a lot to think about, which is what I think good art is supposed to do. It's supposed to get you talking, it's supposed to get you thinking, and hip hop's supposed to get you talking. Hip hop's supposed to get you thinking. So I do think that Kendrick presenting a less passive version of hip hop is great, but it's like, what of the treatment of women and children? Women and children were used as fodder throughout this beef. Whether it was like, LOL, you play with little kids, or it was LOL, your kids aren't yours, or LOL, your wife's a whore and you beat her, like, and bitch this and bitch that and bitch and hoe and this and that. Like, are we still bitches and hoes in this new iteration of hip hop? Are we still protecting abusers and standing next to them in this new era of hip hop? We kind of pick and choose which predatory behavior we stand alongside of. And that's just something that, like, Black men within the culture, of course Black women as well, but it's still a male dominated field. It's something that they're gonna have to figure out. Are we still the bitches and hoes in this new iteration of hip hop? Like, please. I think that we don't have any mainstream radical acts that harken back to the origin of this art form, but I do think our representatives through a Kendrick, a Rhapsody, a No Name, a Doechii, they do not go unnoticed, and they are not invalid in how they choose to navigate the systems that they are beholden to. And this whole idea of playing the American game, again, go check out Dissect Podcast. Cole does a great job of breaking this down. But playing the game, do you play the game and kind of sell out and coon out or whatever? Do you go against the game and fight for your monetary financial survival? Is that the game within and of itself, choosing do you play it or not? Do you just hold off on playing it until you ultimately have to play it to get to the ends that you need? Much to think about. And I think that ultimately I could grade this performance in A, because it got us thinking and it got us talking. And ultimately it's not just a Black-white divide. Sometimes it's like poor Blacks versus rich Blacks. Black leftists versus Black liberals. And Black people who also are not like us. So I think that Kendrick is an important artist for this time. And I think that there were also other things we could talk about in terms of these veneers and these hollow representations of what does liberation and protest in America look like. And I appreciate the conduit that he is. If you liked this performance, give me 3 reasons why you liked it. If you didn't like this performance, give me 3 reasons you didn't like it. Don't just say it was trash, it was mid, it was fire. I want to know specifically why you like what you like or why you don't like what you don't like. If you like this video though, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you share this with anyone you think will enjoy, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.